We'll go ahead and get started now. I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us again for our Academic Resilience series. My name is Dr. Ann Godino, and Dr. Margaret Mabindio, who is our founder, is with us as well. Today we have a very interesting session, a very exciting session that has a specific focus on academic determination, resilience, and perseverance, keys to academic success in the sciences. And we have with us today some Millersville alumni who have themselves been very academically resilient and have also been very successful. So we'd like to introduce our panelists for today. Megan Davis Kabala is a Millersville alum, graduating with a Master of Science and Bachelor's of Science in Biology, with concentrations in marine biology and environmental biology, all from Millersville University. Latice Evans is a PhD student in genetics, genomics, and cancer biology at Thomas Jefferson University. Jennifer Hautz is also a PhD candidate in ecology and evolutionary biology at Cornell University. And Kai Ann Thrapper is a fourth-year medical student at Penn State College of Medicine. So to our alumni panelists, welcome back. We are so glad to have you here. And without any further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Brent Horton, who will be leading the discussion. So Dr. Horton, take it away.
Well, thanks again, panelists, for coming, and to Ann and Margaret for having us. So I'd like each of the panelists to just briefly sort of describe, your path from through college. Like, where did you go to high school? How did you get interested in biology? And then when you took your path through biology here at Millersville, and I say this because you all had very different paths. So I would like you to just sort of maybe just in just 2 or 3 minutes, kind of give our attendees an idea of what your path was like, so that they can maybe relate to some of those things. And let's start with Kai.
Okay, hi everybody. Great to be here. I grew up outside of Harrisburg in New Cumberland, PA, which is literally right across the Susquehanna River from Harrisburg. My story is very long and complicated. When I graduated high school, I went to Shippensburg, majoring in pre-med, but unfortunately, I didn't really do well. I kind of took the route a lot of us take in college, where we just kind of have fun and don't really take it very seriously. By my third or fourth year, I had to decide that I needed to change. And so I actually changed my degree to teaching. Graduated, taught for 4 years, middle school and high school science. Enjoyed it, but didn't love it, and realized that what I really wanted to do is go back to medicine. And that's where Millersville came in. I actually redid my entire undergraduate degree at Millersville in 2016 as a 30-year-old student. Had classes with all these panelists that you have, and then was able to spend 2.5 years here redoing my science degree. And then I was fortunate enough to get accepted to Penn State College of Medicine. I'm in my fourth year, and we're currently in interview season for anesthesia. So I'm trying to get into an anesthesia residency right now. So I've had a couple interviews, and hopefully we'll match and find that out in March. But I've always been interested in the sciences. The biggest thing, what has changed in my life, is the want and dream to succeed in the sciences now matches the hard work and dedication. That wasn't the case when I was 19 years old, but it's taken a lot of time to mature, and it's taken me a very long path to get there. But I decided that I wasn't going to let my dream die without really giving it a good chance, and so that's where I'm right now. I'm living my dream.
Awesome, thanks, Kai. Jen, want to say a few words?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Jen. I am currently a 5th-year PhD candidate at Cornell in ecology and evolutionary biology, and I'm from a super small town in rural Pennsylvania. And when it came time for college, it really came down to financials. And I'm a first-generation college student, come from a low-income family, so Millersville was really attractive because it was affordable and it was close to home. So I began wanting to be a high school biology teacher because my high school biology teacher was really influential in getting me into college. So I wanted to give that same opportunity to students. And And then I was randomly placed in a Bio 101 lab, and it just so happened to be Dr. Horton's lab. And I found out that you could get a PhD and teach at the college level. So I was like, ooh, that's cool. So then I randomly just kind of fell into an opportunity of working on a research project in Ecuador, and it studied the social behavior of birds. And at that point in my life, I would not be able to tell you the difference between like a robin and a cardinal. But yeah, went to the Amazon, fell in love with research, and then decided to apply to graduate school while at Millersville. And I got into Cornell, and yeah, I kind of just completely switched career paths. I went from wanting to do high school biology to switching to the animal behavior concentration. And now I'm almost 5 years into my PhD, and I'm interviewing for faculty positions. So it's crazy to see how it all has changed over the past couple of years, but it really was like down to being resilient through all the different steps of the academic journey. So yeah, happy to talk about that more then.
Thank you, Jen. Megan, could you share a few words with us?
Sure. So, hi everyone, I'm Megan. I guess starting from the beginning, I am from northern Baltimore County in Maryland. And I, from the longest time I can remember, had always wanted to be a marine biologist. And so when I attended Millersville, my focus was in marine biology. But then towards, I think, my junior and senior year, my interest started shifting to more towards freshwater ecology and stream biology. And so by the time I graduated, I was kind of at this point where I knew I wanted to go to grad school, but I didn't know exactly the focus or what I really wanted to study, because I was kind of moving away from the marine side and more towards the freshwater side. And so I took a year off, and I found this program called the Chesapeake Conservation Corps. And basically it's a program funded by the Chesapeake Bay Trust, and they place, I think it's young adults, either high school and recent college graduates, at environmentally focused either nonprofit organizations or government agencies in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. And so I matched with the Department of Natural Resources in Maryland. And so there I had a mentor. So the program is designed to assign you a mentor who's also typically your supervisor. And they do professional development and stuff like that too. And so I worked with him. We did biological stream monitoring all across the state of Maryland. And I really started learning more about freshwater mussels and really, really enjoying what I was doing. And then he introduced me, he actually sent me this advertisement for a master's position at the University of Alabama. And so I read this for Carla Atkinson. I read a lot of her papers, and then I just emailed her. And we set up a Skype call, and we chatted for like 2.5 hours. And at the end of the call, she was like, "Hey, I'd love for you to join my lab." So I said, okay. And I was super, super fortunate how everything just kind of fell into place. She had a fully funded NSF grant that I just hopped on. And yeah, so I started that in the spring of 2020. And then I just finished up this past summer with my master's from UA. And then I also got married during grad school. And so I'm actually currently working with my husband right now. He is pursuing ownership of a Chick-fil-A franchise. So while we're in Tuscaloosa, probably for about another year, I'll be working with him. And then once we move, I will dig into a permanent biology job. But yeah, that's kind of my story.
Great. Thanks, Megan. Latisse, want to share your story with us?
Yeah, I'm Latisse. So I went to high school in like Bucks County, Pennsylvania. And if you knew me like in undergrad, I knew I was going to be a doctor. I was going to be an endocrinologist. Like that was it. That was going to happen. And I did really well in high school. Science was always something that came easy to me. And then I hit organic chemistry, and I was like, this is terrible. I'm not going to be a physician. I'm giving up life. I'm giving up everything. And Dr. Horton was my advisor. And so I finished Millersville, I got through organic chemistry, all the things. And I still wasn't sure. I think I doubted if I wanted to be a physician. So for a while, it was the block of like not thinking I was good enough to be a physician. So I took a gap year and worked as a scribe with ophthalmologist. And working with them for a year, I realized I don't want to be a physician. I don't like insurance. I'm not a fan of non-compliant patients. So I can't do it. And then I was like, I remember Dr. Horton's like, you can go to grad school. I think you'd be a great grad student. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do research. And so I applied to Jefferson's master's program in 2020. I had an interview March 13th, 2020. The world shut down the next day. So I did a master's degree during a pandemic. And I still do endocrine related type research. I do research on like hormone receptors and bladder cancer. And so I then decided I actually really love research and I love cancer biology. And so I went to apply to get my PhD. So now I'm a first year PhD student at Jefferson. I still do nuclear receptor research, but I also do cell cycle regulation and PARP research in prostate cancer. So I still get the best of both worlds. I get to do that clinical side that I do enjoy. I just don't work with patients, and I like that. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I wanted to ask our panelists if, and then we want to do some Q&A. We want to leave some time for Q&A with our participants. And do they have the ability to communicate with us?
I do. The easiest thing for participants to do would be to put questions in the chat, and Dr. Horton, you'll be able to see those.
Yes, please, participants, if you have any questions for any of our panelists, go ahead and start typing up your questions in the chat, and we'll get to those here shortly. So I'd like our panelists to reflect on, one of the sort of ideas of this initiative is to promote academic resilience, and a way to think about that is determination, right, and persistence, and in the face of challenges. College is not easy, and everybody has different experiences, but everybody would agree it's not just an easy ride. So especially in the sciences, there's no such thing. And so I'd like you guys to think about a time when you had an obstacle, a barrier that could have made things really rough on you. You've mentioned some things, like Latisse, it was organic chemistry was one thing. But how did you get over that obstacle? How did you get around that barrier? How did you keep moving forward? Were there some resources that you linked into? Did you rely on peers or mentors? And so I'd like you to think about that and maybe share an experience with our attendees so that they realize, hey, you guys did not get to where you are today without overcoming obstacles. And so maybe we'll mix up the order a little bit here, and we'll go backwards this time. Latisse, do you want to start?
Sure. So I'll use my organic chemistry story from Millersville. It was so traumatic, so that's something that I talk about. But it's actually something that I take pride in because I did overcome it. So I didn't do well in organic chemistry. I had to retake the course, and that's the first time that in my life I've ever had to retake anything, and I did not succeed to my standards. So that was a big blow to my self-esteem, to my identity as a biologist, and to my, at the time, thought and dream of becoming a doctor. And so that happened, and I was like, okay, so I need to do something. So I went to Dr. Horton because he's my mentor. He already knew, but we talked about it, and he's like, you can bounce back, you'll be fine. You just have to, hunker down, take it again, do all the things. But I also relied on like my peers, and I think I also relied on like Kai, and he's like really helpful, and he encouraged me. So after I took the course, you take the course, but you still have like, little GPA issues, and so I was like, I don't think I'll be able to bounce back. I don't think I can get into grad school. I think I was catastrophizing, but, Kai really encouraged me, and, the BMP at Millersville, I was a mentor there, but people and the other mentors mentored me, and it encouraged me to just keep going, and to not allow that one moment in time to try to like set up or to stop me from going to wherever it was that I was going to go to. And so that was like the key. So Dr. Horton and like Kai and Jason and a lot of other people really just encouraged me to keep going. Yeah. I mean, also in my personal grit too, because I had to take the course again.
When Latisse refers to the BMP, it's the Biology Mentorship Program. And Latisse and Kai both were mentors for that program. And Jen and Megan were around pretty much the whole time too. But the idea here is that it was communication among peers, and the Biology Mentorship Program focuses on supporting underrepresented students in science. And we have a community and a network there. If you would like more information about that, please feel free to reach out to me and so forth, and I can put you on our mailing list. But what I'm hearing here is you didn't just rely on, one resource. I heard me, your advisor and mentor, and then your peers, especially those that were above you in terms of experience or class level. That was a really valuable thing to do, was to go to someone who's already completed the course successfully and learn about their strategies. So I think that was a good, well-rounded approach for you. So, Megan, how about you? What's a story you'd like to share about resilience?
All right. Well, so I don't know if I mentioned this before, but when I was at Millersville, I did some research with Dr. Horton and Dr. Wallace. And so having them as my co-advisors was amazing. They're my academic dads. But I will say imposter syndrome is so real and so prevalent. And even, throughout undergrad and moving on to grad school, that was a really, really hard thing for me to shake. And just, not feeling like I'm smart enough or good enough, or, sometimes I look at my master's degree and I'm like, really, did that really happen? But having like the student mentors is huge. Having your peers, Jen was a huge one for me. And then just, moving from Millersville to DNR, having that mentor in the workplace, encouraging me. And then just through grad school, having like your peers with you definitely helps too. So I know Latisse said that too, doing a master's during a pandemic. Just grad school has its own unique set of challenges, and layering a pandemic on top of that, really adds to the chaos. But so, yeah, I think my master's degree is pretty much my whole story of resilience there. But getting the research done, I had one of my projects literally get washed away in a stream. So that was pretty devastating. But just realizing there's things that are not in your control, and you just have to keep going forward and doing what you can.
Thanks, Megan. And I'll add that Megan is sort of not really expressing how hard the research was. Megan was supposed to have a partner in the research who dropped out of the project, and Megan did both halves of that work. And she was originally not considered for departmental honors based on the level of her project. And she finished with honors, university honors and departmental honors. And so, wait, did you get, university honors, right? Yeah. And she was also awarded departmental honors for her research. And that's how much she accomplished in 2 years, was simply amazing. So, so good job, Megan. Jen, how about you?
Yeah, I'll kind of piggyback off of what Megan was saying about imposter syndrome. So definitely my toughest semester was the fall semester of my senior year, because I was applying for graduate school. I was trying to maintain my GPA. And also one of the ways that a PhD is funded is through either as a teaching assistant for a course, or you can also apply for external funding, which is called a fellowship. So you're basically just given money from an external agency to do your research. So I was doing all of that in one semester, and I started having panic attacks, and my anxiety and like my identity was linked to my GPA. And like Megan, I was also co-advised by Dr. Wallace, and he always has this saying that grades don't matter. And he would say that to me, and I was like, no, my whole identity is my GPA. And so now being on the other side of things, in graduate school, I can 100% confirm that that is true, that grades don't even matter. Of course, there is a certain threshold of getting into a graduate program, but now I don't even have a graduate GPA. And the relief that I feel now that my identity is not linked to a number like a GPA, the panic attack stopped. So just realizing that there is a life beyond an organic chemistry grade or a grade in endocrinology. So there's lots of different ways to measure your productivity. So just remembering that there is the next step and that your identity is not linked to your GPA.
Good advice. Good advice. Kai, you've been through a lot, and but one moment that you felt was something you really had to push through.
Sure. So a lot of our other my fellow panelists have talked about like stressful moments in academia with classwork or something, but we're still human, so we have a personal life too that affects us. So this is a moment from my first year of medical school. So I've been blessed. I have 2 children, and I have a third on the way. But the second kiddo was born about 3 days before the largest anatomy exam in our first year. So needless to say, it was a very stressful time. And one of the things that I had to learn in that moment was that there's a difference when we think of resiliency, and especially academic resiliency. We always think that you have to succeed, that you've got to get that A. Like Jen said, chasing that GPA goal, chasing those high numbers. That's not always true. And what I had to realize that is I could try to chase that, like try to get an A on this exam or score really well, which at Penn State doesn't matter because we're a pass-fail curriculum. Or I could have the mindset that I need to survive, that this is a stressful time, that I can't do everything, and that the well-being of my wife and my new child are much more important than spending all the time in the lab. Now, what helped me get through that was a very supportive wife who was going through labor and encouraging me to study. I have wonderful classmates and teachers here who understood what I was going through and would have let me push the exam back. But for me, what helped me survive was finding moments where I didn't have any responsibility with my wife to go do work. So thankfully, she gave birth at the same college that I go to at Penn State. So when she was resting, I could go to the anatomy lab or study. But for me, the big thing was understanding that there are moments when you've just got to survive and make it through to the next step. And then from the next step, then you can climb that ladder a little bit more. You never just want to fall off the cliff. You never want to let the burdens of whatever's going on force you off the cliff. If you can just hang on, you can find another foothold and move up at another time.
That's solid advice. Thank you all for that. I'd like to encourage our attendees, if they have a question for one of our panelists, please go ahead and put it in the chat. I don't see any questions at this moment. Anne, do you?
I don't see any questions either.
Okay. So the next, y'all are already giving some advice as you're working through this process here, but I would like to maybe go to each of you and ask, you were Millersville alumni, the resources here. You came through the science program here, and I'm looking through our attendees. There's a lot of science majors there that are going through what you went through. Could you list a couple of resources that you would strongly suggest that students take advantage of that are available to them here at Millersville? And I'll ask Jen this time. We'll mix up the order. So
a resource that's always available is going to office hours. And I know that can be super scary, especially if you're an introvert. And as a freshman, professors are scary. Like I was terrified of Dr. Horton and Dr. Wallace. And you just have to kind of put yourself out there, go to office hours. And even if you don't have a question about an assignment, it is worth the effort to go through and get to know the professors on a personal level, because for anything, an internship, graduate school, medical school, you're going to need references. And whenever I review applications now for certain programs, I automatically go to the recommendation letters, because that's where the professors can really talk about the student beyond just their academics. For example, what I see on a transcript. So go to office hours, even if you don't have a question, just go to office hours and just give a random fun fact about yourself. And you never know, maybe that could end up in a research opportunity or or anything like that.
For Jen, that would be dumb dad jokes. Megan, what advice would you give to our students who are with us today?
I remember signing up for group tutoring a lot, probably mostly for organic chemistry. It was mostly chemistries, I think. But I mean, don't be afraid. Don't feel like you're like, oh, they're going to think I'm dumb. I need tutoring. Like, it's a resource there for a reason. Like, use it. There's no shame in asking for help. So I'd say, sign up for tutoring. And like Jen said, go to office hours and just ask questions and don't leave until you understand.
That's an excellent point. So Megan, since you and Jen have, I don't know if you knew this, but I took over tutoring for the biology department. And we now call it biology academic support. We're trying to, as the BMP mentors taught me, we're trying to go away from the old model of tutoring and promote more of this peer study type of stuff that the BMP did and that you were doing there. You were going to the group sessions, not the one-on-one. And so what we have now is in biology, for all students to know, is we now offer 20 plus mentor guided open study sessions a week now. Rooms are reserved for these classes, and we have academic mentors, much like the folks that you're talking with here were when they were here. And they are sitting in rooms reserved for students to study. And we have open study sessions, or open labs, we call them, for all of our core courses in biology that are course specific. So if any student is in biology and would like to start using that stuff, feel free to stop by my office hours, and I can get you linked to a mentor that might work well with you, help you find a time slot. Also, chemistry peer learning is excellent opportunity to go to work with peers who can help you with chemistry. The Math Assistance Center is another resource along those lines. So when you think of tutoring, get rid of the old ideas. Academic support can help a student go from a B to an A, the same as it can help a student, go from an F to a D. So it's for everyone. It's not for just those who are struggling. So thanks, Megan, for bringing that up. Let's see, Kai, how about you?
So I have two things. The one echoes with the idea of the open office hours, but it's develop relationships with your professors. When you go to a school like Millersville, your professors are there to teach you. They're not going to an R1 institution that is all they want to do is research. They're there to do research, but they're also there to teach you. And I found that when I started interacting with my professors, the relationship I developed them was just excellent. And this is really like a good point for me, because when I was 19 or 20 years old, I didn't do those things. I was like most students who was afraid to go to talk to my professors when I was struggling, or when I was not, I just would avoid them. And because of that, they never got to know me. They never got to see, hey, this guy wants to go here. How can I help him along that path? So if you're struggling, go to your professors. They want to help you. They don't want to just for you to fail. They really don't want that. That looks bad on them. So they want to help you succeed in every way possible. And when I got to meet Dr. Horton, I met him in, again, a lab. I assigned to a lab, but by my second year, I was just living in his lab. That's where I would hang out and do my work or just talk to friends. So your relationships can become like that with professors over time, where they literally become almost like a family. And the second thing that I think is surrounding yourself with students who want to succeed. For me, it was being part of the BMP, and also my core group of friends were all very strong academic students who had goals. And so I think when you surround yourself with people that want to do better, not only does that help you stay on task, but sometimes you get some competitive juices flowing. I know Jen and I took Physics 2 together, and I had a moment where I did bad on an exam, then I was trying to compete just to get an A with her. She was flying through it, and I was like, I don't want to lose to this woman again. So there was a little bit of that too, where just surrounding yourself with people who are driven, who want to succeed academically will help. And I think the fact that you got 20 mentor hours or mentor-led academic sessions, my gosh, even if you don't need the mentoring, needs the help, just go there. Just go there and do your work. Like I promise you, like college is tough, but in the grand scheme of things, college is a lot of time. If you focus on your work, you're gonna have a lot of time to hang out and do whatever you want to on your off hours. So I encourage you to use those resources and surround yourself with people who are like-minded and want to succeed. And I think that'll help you also succeed as well.
That's great advice, Kai. Very sage. I really like the part where you brought in another aspect, and that's who to surround yourself with. And as an advisor, I often talk to a lot of students who are, my advisees who aren't doing well, thinking about changing their major. Some are thinking about leaving college. And very often the unsuccessful students that I'm trying to help, I ask them a simple question. Do you have friends in biology? Do you have friends in chemistry? Are you surrounding yourself with people who understand the path you're on? It's good to have friends from all different backgrounds and so forth as college friends, but do you have somebody that you're linked to that understands why you've got to study on a Saturday? Because they do too. And that's a good starting point. And like I remember Kai was, you remember Xander in class in endocrinology? They competed in endocrinology and helped each other do well. And it was funny. They were open about it, but it was just between them, and they didn't care about anybody else. But they motivated each other, and that's a very good thing. Jen and Megan fed off each other and motivate each other. Latisse was usually the motivator, in the BMP. So this having people that are is like that around you is healthy, very healthy. So great advice, Latisse. Let's see, what advice do you want to give in using resources?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them, they also like all the things I'd say. But I just want to add to like what Kai said about reaching out, like I think they all said it, but reaching out to faculty members. The great thing about Millersville, it's such a small university. So you're not a number. But like not just if you're struggling, like yes, go to them obviously if you're struggling, but not just if you're struggling, but like I cannot stress enough how like my relationship with Dr. Horton, like in knowing him has I really don't believe I'd be where I am today without knowing Dr. Horton. His encouragement through the time of my freshman year to now, to today. He saw things in me that I did not see in myself. It took years to see. So like building relationships with faculty members, to just have that like, encouragement, to have that, for them to see things in you that you don't see, or to be like, hey, did you think about this career path? To just like be there. And Dr. Ramos, some of the biology majors, we know her. She's great. She was a great asset too. And just like, I went to her office hours or I talked to her after class. And I think it's so important to have, professors that, they all care about you, but to have that relationship, to have that encouragement when things get hard, because it's hard. This is not an easy thing to do. And then also, adding to what Kai said about surrounding yourself with people who understand. And then also just like, I think it's important, like for the BNP was really helpful because, you had like a group of people, you had these like designated times, but like friendships come out of them, lifelong friendships. So just like they encourage you as well. You can study with them as well. Or you can teach them, right? Like if, as you're around people, you're like, oh, wow, like I know this. And it helps you because like if you can teach someone, then most likely that means you know it. So like forming like study groups and forming, these like little pods with people in, in your major or, other majors. But I think too, like, they don't all have to be science majors for you to like hang around them. Because my closest friend was a communications major, right? She did not study as much as I did, but she was like, hey, let's do some work. And usually I don't know what she was doing, but we were in the library, together, and she encouraged me. But she was driven. So having driven people is the key. So don't be hung up on, if they don't have your major, but if they're driven and, they have a a drive and a passion, hang out with them, you know. Birds of a feather flock together.
That's a good saying for someone who studies birds. So, all right. So we got a question in the chat here that I think is a really good one, and it's I believe it's from Dr. Miller in chemistry. So here we're thinking about this idea that you have talked about, that it can be distracting to focus on GPA, and the question asks, can you describe a bit about how to approach classes focusing on learning content rather than just earning a grade? And anyone who wants to take it.
I'll jump in here first. I think it ultimately, so here's the thing about like grades and GPA. So like I know Jen had mentioned, Dr. Wallace talked about, grades don't matter, GPA don't matter. And that is true, but there are moments when it does matter. So being a medical student, unfortunately, and it sucks about what it is, there are just so many applicants that you just get weeded out if your grades aren't where they need to be. For example, Penn State gets 8,000 applicants for first-year students. If you're looking to go to a DO school, you're looking at a minimum of 11,000 applicants. And very few schools are willing to take the time to review every single one. That was the beauty of Penn State. All 8,000 people got their application reviewed by a human being and didn't get weeded out. But I think that when you start with day one of understanding, of going with a mindset, I need to know this information, the grades will take care of itself. A lot of times when people get caught up with focusing on a grade, it's because they haven't focused from day one on the content. And now it's all about making up. It's about, if I get a 95 on this, I'll bring up my average to an 82. Or if I get 100 on this exam, this will bring me up to an A- or an A. At that point, it's already too late to get rid of that stress and not have that. So from day one, you've just got to focus that I've got to put the hours in to know the content. And if you do that approach, I really truly feel that the grades will come. If you know the information, you're gonna get an A. I mean, that's how grading works, right? So focus from day one rather than taking it easy at the beginning of the semester and getting yourself in. Go hard in the beginning, focus on knowing the information. And then, to be honest, when you go hard in the beginning, you get to coast at the end. So for me, for Organic Chemistry 2, I went into the final exam to secure an A. All I had to score on the final exam was a 15%. Okay, I just had to show up, write my name on it, and walk out. That's because I focused and got my work done early, and built up my average and grade point average to the point where finals never actually mattered for me in terms of getting an A or not. So focus from day one on the content, and the grades will follow.
There's a value too. I remember one thing Kai said, and Latisse is doing this, Jen, everybody. Y'all are applying the knowledge you learned here, the things that your course has taught you, and some were more important maybe than others based on your disciplines. But now where you are, if you had just crammed to get a grade, you wouldn't have the knowledge to be successful in the positions you're in now. And I think that that's a key thing for students to realize, that if you're focused on the grade rather than learning the content, you're more likely to lose the stuff that you cram or just short-term memory, because it's not going to stick with you. And especially if you're wanting to go to med school and you need to deal with MCATs, or if you're, going into a research position like the other panelist here, your mentors are going to expect you to know things based on what was on your transcript. So if they see endocrinology on your transcript, they're going to expect you to have a grasp of endocrinology. And so that's why you really need to invest in learning the content so that you have it to apply later. And so not always do we do that. Okay, but the effort should be there, especially for your science courses. And then when you're ready to think about other subjects, you have a broader understanding and perspective on life and how you solve problems. So that's why the general education stuff is also important for us. And so we want to not just think about our major, but our holistic education. Would someone else like to comment on about focusing on learning content rather than GPA?
Yeah, I was actually going to say a similar thing to what you just said, because I think I agree with Kai, but I also think you can easily, beginning of the year, first exam, just memorize it and get an A. I've done that. I've done that before. Freshman year, it's like, easy, okay. But it gets to a point where it's like, what is your why? Like, why am I doing this, right? Like, why am I in this major? Like, why do I want to, why do I want to learn this? So I think when you have that shift in your mindset as to oh, because I really want to do, I don't know, I want to go and get my PhD. I want to teach. And like Dr. Horton said, this course that you've taken in undergrad, you get to grad school and they're like, oh yeah, Oxfos, remember back, yeah, you should know the concept of that. And you're sitting there and you're like, oh, yeah, okay, I guess I should know. But you may not know because you just memorized it for an exam that you took 3 years ago. But maybe if you took that time to understand the foundation, because biology is very foundational, despite what people think, it's not just memorization, right? It's foundational. So taking that time to build that foundation, and I think undergrad is a perfect time to really, zone in on that and take that time to just to build the foundation of wherever it is. And sometimes some of the stuff you're like, oh, because for me, I was like, zoology, I don't really know if that's relevant to my life. I don't know. But it was interesting. And sometimes it may not be relevant, but there's interest there. And I think also as you get into if you go to grad school, you start to realize that you're kind of expected to know a little bit about everything. But be an expert in your field, but know a little bit about everything. So when you change that mindset of I'm a scientist, I'm a biologist, let me focus and understand this concept. Let me go to office hours, not to just try to haggle to get a point, but let me understand this foundational building block. And then, like Kai said, the grades will come. So I think focusing on that rather than just an A, because an A is great, but if you forget everything, then it doesn't really matter.
There's also a balancing act in terms of when you are doing organic chemistry the same time that you're doing zoology and an English class. There's definitely a balance. And I always used to go to the syllabus and I look at the learning objectives that are there, or a study guide that's provided, and try not to fixate on the really minute details about a specific mechanism. And also for classes like organic chemistry, realizing that that class could be one where you're just memorizing it and then you don't remember anything. You just have to get over the hurdle. But first, if you find yourself in a biology course, really excited to go to the class or going back and reading the textbook for fun, that should really be you should be keying into that interest and realize that that should be a particular class that you're really trying not to just memorize, but to devour it and remember it. So for things like physics and organic chemistry, I think it's okay to memorize it and forget about it later. But for your upper level elective courses, those could be determining your career path. So really focusing in on those, but also balancing all of your other requirements.
I think to add on to what Jen was saying, you do have to get through all of your general classes, like the physics and all that stuff. But once you do get to those upper level classes, choose classes that interest you. And if you're taking a class that genuinely interests you, then I think you're more likely to, look at, learn the big picture and learn the concepts. And you're not so much focused on, getting the A. It's because, you're actually enjoying what you're learning. Like Jen and I took forensic entomology with Dr. Wallace. And that was honestly, I was like, oh, that sounds really cool. Let's try it. And it was, genuinely interesting class. So I think, yeah, and that goes for grad school too. You take classes based on your research interests, what interests you. And I think that's a really cool part about grad school, but also your upper level classes.
All excellent advice. I appreciate your insight. I think that we probably are going to need to go soon because we have students that need to get to classes and professors like me need to teach a lab at 1. But I want to finish with one last question here, and it's for Latisse. And it says, this is one of our BMP participants, Latisse. And she asked, as a woman of color, was it hard pursuing a higher level of education?
Yeah, so yes and no. I'm stubborn, so I was like, there's no one that looks like me doing this. Like it's rare. So I was like, I want that. But then there's times where I'm in a room and I say something and I'm right, but then people look at me and I'm wrong. Like I'm wrong. And then I'm like, oh, maybe I'm wrong. So then imposter syndrome sets in. So there's times where it's hard. And then I have to battle with myself that I am where I'm supposed to be and I deserve a space here. So it wasn't hard because I knew that I wanted this for that exact reason. But sometimes it can be, and sometimes you just have to kind of fight that like outside noise. But I encourage everyone to get involved. We need more people, more women of color being, PIs and professors, which is my goal. I aspire to kind of go back to somewhere and be like Dr. Horton. So that's the goal. So yeah, hopefully you do that. And if you ever need any, advice, Dr. Horton has my contact. Feel free to reach out to him and get that contact information.
Thank you, Matisse, for that insight. So yes, I do know all four of the panelists well, and I am in contact with them. So if any of the students who are attending today would like to reach out to one of them, if there's something that you relate to, maybe it's research interest, med school, subject matter, whatever. If you would like to follow up, I know that these are all mentors. These are all kind people who would like to would be happy to talk to you and help. And I think that y'all would be okay if I forwarded an email to you from a participant. So okay, so so feel free to do so. And if you want further conversation or advice from some of these wonderful students who certainly made my time here at Millersville very rewarding. So I'm very appreciative for you all coming today. And good luck to you as you move into your next stages. So, all right. So let's say, I think, yeah, people are starting to head out. So I think it's time to wrap it up. Anne, do you want to say anything?
Thank you so much, Dr. Horton, for leading this. Thanks to our alumni. It was really fascinating to hear all of your stories and your tremendous accomplishments. You certainly do make us proud here at Millersville University, and wish you all the best as you continue in your advanced studies. Would like to thank Dr. Margaret Mabinyo, who is the creator of this series, and the fact that she has the insight and the forward thinking of having panelists such as this. So Dr. Mabinyo, a huge thank you to you. Would just like to put on everyone's calendar the next Academic Resilience series, which will take place on November 17th, also at 12 noon. And this particular session, you can attend either in person at the Student Memorial Center, the Rygaard Multipurpose Room, or you can attend online as we are right now. So in person and online. And the topic for that day is the power of relationships in building academic resilience, which I'm sure will follow up quite nicely because our panelists today talk so much about the importance of those relationships. So again, thank you, Dr. Horton. Thank you to each of our panelists. We wish you so much success in the future. And thanks for those of you who attended in person today. And we know that many more will see this recording, and hope that you can join us again on November 17th for the next session. Thanks so much.